My name is Stefan Keienburg. I'm 55 years old and I live in Essen.
My name's Mohammed El Gabry. I turned 60 this year. I'm originally from Cairo in Egypt, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery here at Essen University Hospital.
The whole story started in late 2009. I had an infection that wouldn't go away, and which turned into my first heart valve inflammation. My family doctor thought it was a cold and sent me to bed for a week. But unfortunately, it wasn't just a cold. I then changed doctors, and after seeing me for 3 minutes, he immediately sent me to the hospital, where I had my first heart valve replacement. That was in 2010. I got through the surgery pretty well, as far as I can tell. Unfortunately, I had massive arrhythmias, fibrillation, and fluttering that occurred afterwards, which complicated things quite a bit. And that was actually worse than the surgery itself. We all thought everything would be fine after the operation, but then it really went downhill. That was very stressful.
Stefan Keienburg's first mitral valve surgery in 2010 was a very long and complex procedure. His infected mitral valve, the heart valve between the left atrium and left ventricle, was replaced with a bioprosthetic heart valve. The surgery resulted in many troublesome after-effects, from which Keienburg gradually recovered. He went on to lead an almost normal, symptom-free life in the following years.
Endocarditis is an inflammation of the heart valves. You have 4 valves, and with me it's always been the mitral valve. And the fact that it had been inflamed before and replaced made it very susceptible to recurring problems.
What's fascinating to me about cardiac surgery is that it's all about the heart. If there's a problem with the heart, then there is a problem with everything else, the liver, the bones, and the lungs. You can do whatever you want to the other organs. If the heart isn't working, then nothing else will work. That's why I like my job so much, because I work on the root of the problem. It's really good to see a damaged heart valve get repaired, for example, or to see when a patient who could hardly breathe can now run up the stairs. It's important, and I enjoy doing it, but most of all, it's satisfying. It still is, even after so many years and the thousands of operations I've done.
I have a biological valve. A biological valve has a limited lifetime. Estimates vary from between 12 to 20 years. I was, of course, aware that I would need surgery again sometime, and it wasn't too hard to work out roughly when. 2010 plus 12 years means 2022. I figured, okay, at some point you're going to realize the valve isn't working as it should, and it'll need to be replaced. I'll go to the doctor then, and the doctor will say, yeah, it's time, and I'll have the surgery. But unfortunately, things turned out very differently.
Der alte Stefan war ich schon nach 2010 nicht mehr.
I was no longer the old Stefan from 2010. Keep in mind, I've never been one for putting things off, and now far less so. If I can do something, I will, right away. My friends are much more important to me than they used to be. I've known my best friend for 45 years, and that's become so important to me. I don't care about anything else. I don't even mind that he's a fan of a stupid soccer team. Other things have become much, much more important to me now. That was in early 2022. I went to my doctor with, I don't know, a slight discomfort and neck pain. And then I was taken straight to the hospital with a suspected heart attack. And they determined that I had yet another case of endocarditis. It turned out that I needed a new heart valve again. And it wasn't going to be a routine procedure as I'd planned, but another, quote, emergency surgery. That really shocked me.
Ja, da war ich wirklich erschrocken.
Der Stefan kam mit akuter Endokarditis.
Stefan arrived with a case of acute endocarditis of the prosthetic mitral valve. That is, of course, a very serious condition. And it's also known that complications and mortality in such procedures are relatively high, almost 30%. It didn't shock me at all. It's my job. It's what I do most here. But after reading the report from the initial surgery, I thought, oh my God, what is this? It was more or less 3 operations in one. A very long, complex, complicated procedure. The margin of error in such cases is 0. And you need a lot of experience.
Due to acute inflammation of his bioprosthetic heart valve, Stefan Keienburg needed further surgery and another mitral valve replacement in 2022. The procedure required a cardio-pulmonary bypass machine, just like in 2010. The patient's history made the operation highly complex. There was a very high risk of an overshooting immune response, as well as the risk of an infection. Such an uncontrolled immune response can cause massive damage to the body and its organs, and seriously hamper the healing process. To mitigate this risk, the CytoSorb adsorber was integrated into the cardiopulmonary bypass during the procedure.
Hat auch Antikoagulationen gehabt und das natürlich auch sehr.
He also received anticoagulants. It's of course very important that these are adsorbed, because endocarditis per se tends to result in post-operative bleeding.
Hat eine höhere Tendenz von Nachblutung.
And when the patient is taking anticoagulants on top of everything else, then the risk is 3 or 4 times higher. So for me it was essential, without a doubt, that the adsorber had to be used in this case.
Due to chronic atrial fibrillation, Stefan Keienburg was also being treated with Apixaban, an anticoagulant. This greatly increased the risk of bleeding during surgery. Since the CytoSorb adsorber allows for the possibility to remove the anticoagulant along with the messenger substances, Keienburg benefited twice over from the intraoperative treatment. The procedure was performed without any complications, and there were no post-operative complications with regard to bleeding.
Alles das, was 2010 hinterher auch aufgetreten war.
Everything that had happened after my surgery in 2010, the arrhythmias and all those things, there was none of that. Things were looking really good. And 2 days before I was supposed to go to rehab, it was the Thursday before Easter, the day I was supposed to be discharged from the hospital, my suitcase was on the bed ready to be packed. A doctor came in and said, "Mr. Keienburg, I'm afraid the news is not so good. Unfortunately, your new heart valve is not working properly." I asked her what it was, and she explained that the suture had come loose. I was going to need another operation, and we were going to have to start everything all over again.
Gesamte Geschichte wieder von vorne starten.
Diese Komplikation kann immer passieren bei solchen Eingriffen.
This kind of complication can always occur in such procedures with inflammation and weak tissue. We conduct examinations, of course, and we monitor everything both in the OR and prior to transfer. And in both cases, the rim of the valve was sealed tightly. It is still possible that at a later date, sometime after the operation, a suture tears causing leakage. And allowing a leak to persist under such circumstances is dangerous.
Diese Leckage bei solchen Umständen ist gefährlich zuzulassen. Erstens zerstört die Blut.
Firstly, it will destroy the blood cells, resulting in hemolysis. And secondly, with such a patient history, the hole is an ideal location for a new inflammation to develop, due to all the friction on the hole. That means the risk of endocarditis recurring again is high.
Mir ist komplett der Boden unter den Füßen weggezogen worden.
I was utterly devastated. I don't cry.
Also nicht, weil ich ein
Not
Mann bin,
because I'm a man,
nicht, weil
but
ich-
because I always look on the bright side.
Und ich hab
And
mich
I just
gefreut.
broke
Also
down.
meine Frau hat mir viel geholfen.
My wife helped me a lot,
Also
whereas I,
Lass mal eben
well,
kurz
I,
wissen. Also die Stärke habe ich von
let's
meiner
just
Frau.
say my wife was a source of strength. She helped me a lot,
Und sie hat aber
but she
sehr-
suffered a great deal as well.
Also es war halt,
So it
das
was
ist
really a
wirklich
very,
ganz schlimme
very
Zeit,
bad time because
weil wir
we both
beide
knew that it was going to start all
dass es
over
wieder von
again.
vorne anfängt,
The
dass
same
die
story was
gleiche
going to play
Geschichte
out.
wiederkommt und halt
And it
noch
might be
schlimmer.
even worse.
Jeder hat gesagt,
Because
na ja, das ist
everyone
jetzt das dritte Mal,
said,
dass wir die
this is the
Brust aufmachen.
third time we're opening
Und
up
das
your
wird nicht besser
chest.
dadurch.
That's not going to make it any better.
Und ist dann ja auch so geworden. Es war dann halt schon noch sehr heftig.
It was really tough. The third operation was very dangerous and risky. It was a very dramatic night. My wife sat by the phone, actually waiting for someone to call and say, that was it.
Anrufen und sagt, dass es das nicht war. Es musste sehr knapp gewesen sein. Ich habe das
And
logischerweise nicht
it must have been a very close thing.
Während der OP
I knew nothing about all this, of course. During the surgery, I also had kidney failure. I got hooked up to dialysis, all kinds of stuff. It was a lot more serious than the operations I'd had before. And when the anesthesiologist came to my room a week later and said, Mr. Keienburg,
Herr Keienburg, das freut mich ja total, dass Sie noch unter uns sind.
I'm glad you're still with us.
Hat mir dann,
I thought,
gedacht,
wow.
Das muss,
must have been dramatic.
dramatisch gewesen sein.
Professor Gabry also said that it was a difficult operation. I didn't really become aware of that until later.
Und das ist mir im Nachhinein erst richtig alles bewusst geworden.
Roughly 6 weeks after the successful replacement of his infected prosthesis, Stefan Keienburg had to undergo a third operation on his mitral valve due to a paravalvular leak, or leakage from the rim of the prosthetic heart valve. This is a known complication, as partial valve rupture or suture rupture may occur due to the inflamed tissue. Once again, there was the even greater risk of a dysregulated immune response, causing major damage to the body, due to the fact that yet another cardio-pulmonary bypass machine procedure was scheduled. The adsorber was deployed safely and easily in this third procedure as well, integrated into the cardio-pulmonary bypass, contributing to the success of the operation.
These are things that I as a surgeon can't influence. I can't completely avoid post-operative bleeding in such patients under these circumstances. All I can do is extensive hemostasis and everything that goes with it. But that alone is sometimes not enough. My experience with such patients, especially in the last 7 years, when I've used the adsorber regularly, shows that it works very well.
Es gab Momente, wo ich keinen Bock
There were times when I wanted to give up, when I just said, no, if there's a magic pill, I'll swallow it now and it can all be over. I'm not kidding.
Definitiv.
Every complication I've had, and every patient death, still affects me today. I can't just forget about it and say, okay, the patient died and now I'm going to go home and do something normal with my wife and kids. No, I can't do that.
Das schaffe ich nicht. Das ist ein Handballer.
I've been an athlete, a mountain of a guy. And that combination of being so big yet also very calm, it impressed me. I liked him. So of course, I hope for his sake that everything goes smoothly in the future. I can reassure him and say, yes, as far as your heart is concerned, everything has been done that needed to be done. And it shouldn't hinder him at all. Of course, due to his condition, he will need to be careful, but otherwise he should be able to enjoy life. And that is my wish for him.
Das wünsche ich ihm auf jeden Fall.
Wir haben einmal im Jahr haben wir
Once a year, I have an annual review with my supervisor. He said he admired me for how I'd handled the past year. In retrospect, I have to say, yeah, I was surprised myself. It is what it is, and it turned out okay. I'm not one of those bubbly optimists, but that's okay.
Das passt, ja.
As demonstrated in the case of Stefan Keienburg's 2 extremely complex endocarditis surgeries, the adsorber can help to promote the healing process and support rapid patient recovery. But it can also help in other situations involving an overshooting inflammatory response or an increased risk of bleeding due to anticoagulants. Over 195 procedures in the 10 years since market launch speak for themselves. Great news, not just for Stefan Keienburg.